Voyager 1's final signal just stopped the world with an impossible cosmic revelation. The December morning air bit through Harold Mitchell's jacket as he stepped onto his Pasadena porch to retrieve a newspaper, a ritual he'd maintained for the past 5 years of retirement. At 70 years old, Harold had earned his peaceful mornings after 4 decades of sleepless nights at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. His weathered hands, once steady enough to calibrate the most sensitive instruments on the Voyager missions, now trembled slightly as he unfolded the Los Angeles Times. But this morning would be different. This morning would shatter the quiet retirement he'd built for himself and thrust him back into the center of humanity's greatest discovery. The phone rang at exactly 7:23 a.m., and Harold's life would never be the same again. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the receiver with an urgency Harold hadn't heard since the critical moments of Voyager 1's Neptune flyby in 1989. Harold, you need to get down here immediately. Something's happening with Voyager 1, and none of us can make sense of it. Sarah had been Harold's protege during the golden years of the Voyager program, and now she was the mission's lead scientist. Her voice carried a tremor that made Harold's coffee cup pause halfway to his lips. "What kind of something?" he asked, though deep in his gut. He already knew this wasn't a routine technical glitch. "The impossible kind," Sarah whispered. "Harold, Voyager 1 was supposed to go silent months ago. Her radioisotope thermoelectric generators should be nearly depleted. But 3 hours ago, she started transmitting again. Not just random signals, Harold, structured data, complex patterns. And the signal strength, it's stronger than it's been in years. It's like something out there is powering her up." Harold's hand found the back of his favorite armchair, the same chair where he'd celebrated Voyager 1's crossing into interstellar space 12 years ago. The leather had worn smooth under his touch during countless evenings of stargazing and remembering. Now, that familiar comfort felt distant as Sarah's words sank in. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, he said, his voice steadier than his racing heart. The drive to JPL felt like traveling through time. Every street corner held memories of the Voyager program's glory days, when Harold and his team had been humanity's ambassadors to the outer solar system. As he passed the familiar landmarks of Pasadena, Harold's mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The golden record they'd attached to both Voyager spacecraft contained Earth's greatest hits: music, images, voices of children, sounds of nature. It was meant to be a message in a bottle for any intelligence that might find it. But what if something had found it first? What if something was now using Voyager 1 to send a message back? The security guard at JPL's entrance recognized Harold immediately. "Good to see you back, Dr. Mitchell. Must be something big to bring you out of retirement." Harold managed a weak smile as he clipped on his visitor's badge. The weight of it felt heavier than the permanent badge he'd carried for 40 years. Walking through the familiar corridors, he passed the mission control rooms where he'd spent the most intense and rewarding years of his career. The walls still displayed images from Voyager's grand tour, Jupiter's swirling storms, Saturn's magnificent rings, the mysterious moons that had captivated the world. But today, those achievements felt like mere preparation for whatever awaited him in the current mission control center. Sarah met him at the door, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her eyes red from what Harold suspected had been a sleepless night. "Thank God you're here," she said, gripping his arm. "Harold, in 40 years of space exploration, I've never seen anything like this. The data is consistent, it's repeating, and it's definitely artificial. But it's coming from something that should be running on fumes 18 billion miles from Earth." The Mission Control Center buzzed with an electricity Harold remembered from the most critical moments of planetary flybys. Engineers hunched over computer screens, their faces illuminated by streams of data that defied explanation. The main display showed Voyager 1's trajectory, a tiny dot representing humanity's farthest traveled ambassador, now deep in the cosmic ocean between stars. But beside the familiar trajectory data was something new. Signal strength readings that shouldn't exist, data packets with structures they'd never seen before. "Showing the patterns," Sarah called to Dr. James Rodriguez, the mission's chief data analyst. James had been a graduate student when Harold retired, bright-eyed and eager to push the boundaries of space exploration. Now, He looked like a man who'd seen something that challenged everything he'd learned about the universe. Dr. Mitchell, what we're seeing goes against every principle of spacecraft engineering, James began, his voice barely steady. Voyager 1's power should be declining exponentially. But look at this. The main screen filled with a graph showing power levels over time. The familiar decline they've been tracking for years suddenly reversed into a sharp upward spike. 3 hours and 17 minutes ago, her power output didn't just stabilize, it increased. Dramatically. Harold studied the data with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades interpreting spacecraft telemetry. The patterns were unmistakable, but they were also impossible. What about the transmitter? Any signs of malfunction or interference? That's just it, Sarah interjected. Everything is functioning perfectly. Better than perfectly, actually. We're receiving telemetry from systems that we thought had failed years ago. It's as if someone has not only recharged Voyager 1, but also repaired her. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Harold, we think something found her. Something that doesn't want her to die. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of computers and the distant rumble of Southern California traffic. Harold felt the weight of 70 years pressing down on his shoulders. He dedicated his life to pushing humanity's presence deeper into space, to answering the fundamental question of whether we were alone in the universe. Now, standing in this room filled with impossible data, he realized that question might be answering itself. If you're following this incredible discovery, drop Voyager in the comments below. This story gets even more mind-bending from here. Make sure you're subscribed because what we uncover next will change everything you thought you knew about our place in the universe. The first structure message arrived at 2:47 p.m. Pacific Time, and it changed everything. Harold had been staring at the data streams for hours, his trained eyes searching for patterns in what appeared to be random noise. But as the afternoon wore on, the signals began to organize themselves into something that made his hands shake and his heart race. Dr. Chin called the entire team to gather around the main display as the computer algorithms finished their analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah announced to a room of exhausted scientists and engineers, we are no longer looking at random data. We are looking at mathematics. The screen filled with sequences of numbers that followed patterns too complex and purposeful to be coincidental. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and then something that made Harold's breath catch in his throat. The mathematical constants that define the Golden Records coordinate system. It knows where we are, whispered Dr. Rodriguez, his voice barely audible above the quiet hum of computers. Whatever is transmitting through Voyager 1, it's not just sending random signals. It's referencing the information we put on the Golden Record. It's telling us it found our message and it understands it. Harold moved closer to the display, his eyes scanning the data with the intensity of a man who'd spent his career decoding the secrets of space. The mathematics were elegant, sophisticated, and undeniably artificial. But embedded within the numerical sequences were patterns that seemed almost conversational, as if something was trying to establish a dialogue using the universal language of mathematics. There's more, Sarah said, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement and fear. The signal isn't just coming from Voyager 1's location. Our deep space network is picking up coordinated transmissions from multiple points in space. Whatever found Voyager 1 isn't alone, and it's not just communicating with us. It's communicating about us. The implications hit Harold like a physical blow. For decades, scientists had debated whether humanity should be actively seeking contact with extraterrestrial intelligence or quietly listening for signals from space. The Voyager program had taken the middle path, sending a message into the cosmic ocean and hoping that someday, millions of years in the future, some intelligence might find it. They had never considered the possibility that something might find it so quickly, understand it so thoroughly, and respond so directly. Harold, Sarah continued, the energy readings we're getting from Voyager 1 suggest that whatever is powering her is using technology we can barely comprehend. The power output is consistent with fusion-level energy generation, but contained in a space smaller than Voyager 1 herself. And the mathematical precision of the signals suggests a level of intelligence that... She paused, struggling to find words for the magnitude of what they were witnessing. That surpasses our own, Harold finished quietly. The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled over the assembled team. They were no longer the explorers reaching out into the unknown. They had become the discovered, examined, and evaluated by intelligences that had mastered technologies humanity could only dream of. Harold thought of his grandchildren, playing in their suburban backyard just 20 miles from where he now stood. In their innocent world, humanity was still the dominant intelligence in the known universe. But that world was about to change forever. The data streaming through Voyager 1 represented first contact with civilizations so advanced that they could resurrect a dying spacecraft across 18 billion miles of space and use it as a communication device. "What do we do now?" asked Dr. Rodriguez, voicing the question that hung heavy in the air. "Do we respond? Do we try to communicate back?" Harold studied the faces around him, brilliant scientists and engineers who had dedicated their lives to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Now they looked to him, the old man who had helped send humanity's first messages to the stars, for guidance on how to handle humanity's first response from them. The weight of the decision pressed down on Harold's shoulders as he realized that whatever choice they made in this moment would echo through history. The careful, methodical approach of scientific discovery was about to collide with the urgent reality of interstellar diplomacy. And at the center of it all was Voyager 1, humanity's tiny ambassador, now serving as a bridge between two vastly different intelligences separated by the cosmic ocean. The afternoon stretched into evening as more data poured in, each transmission more complex and purposeful than the last. Harold found himself thinking about Carl Sagan, the visionary scientist who had championed the Golden Record Project. Sagan had believed that any intelligence advanced enough to find Voyager would be peaceful, having survived their own technological adolescence. Now, as Harold watched real-time proof of that intelligence unfolding on computer screens, he prayed that Sagan had been right about their intentions. As night fell over Pasadena, the lights of the city twinkled below the JPL complex like earthbound stars. But Harold's attention was fixed on the data from a single point of light 18 billion miles away, where humanity's greatest achievement had become the conduit for the universe's greatest revelation. The signals continued to pour in, each one bringing them closer to an understanding that would change everything about humanity's place in the cosmos. The breakthrough came at 11:43 p.m., when Dr. Sarah Chen's voice cut through the exhausted silence of the Mission Control Center. "Harold, you need to see this immediately. The latest transmission. It's not just mathematics anymore. It's coordinates, and they're mapping something massive." Harold hurried to her workstation, his 70-year-old joints protesting after 16 hours of standing and analyzing data. What he saw on her screen made him grip the desk for support. The display showed a three-dimensional representation of space surrounding Voyager 1's location in the interstellar medium. But instead of the empty void they expected, the coordinates revealed the outline of a structure so vast and geometrically perfect that it challenged every assumption they held about the nature of space itself. The structure appeared to be artificial, measuring thousands of kilometers across, positioned precisely along Voyager 1's trajectory. "This can't be right," whispered Dr. Rodriguez, leaning over Harold's shoulder. "There's nothing out there. The interstellar medium is supposed to be empty space, just a few atoms per cubic centimeter. But these coordinates are describing something solid, something built." His voice carried the tremor of a scientist confronting data that invalidated everything he'd learned about the universe. Harold's mind raced as he studied the geometric patterns. The structure wasn't random or natural. It displayed the mathematical perfection of intelligent design, with proportions that followed complex harmonic ratios. More disturbing still, its position seemed calculated to intercept Voyager 1's path through interstellar space. "It was waiting for us," Harold said quietly, the words carrying a weight that made everyone in the room pause their work. Sarah enhanced the display, showing the structure's relationship to Voyager 1's position and trajectory. "Harold, if these coordinates are accurate, Voyager 1 didn't just stumble across this thing. It was placed directly in Voyager's path, which means whoever built it knew exactly where we'd send our spacecraft decades before we sent it." The implication sent a chill through Harold that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. An intelligence capable of predicting humanity's space exploration efforts 45 years in advance represented a level of technological and analytical capability that was almost godlike. They hadn't just made contact with aliens. They'd made contact with beings who understood human civilization better than humans understood themselves. "There's something else," Sarah continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The power readings we're getting from Voyager 1 suggest that this structure isn't just monitoring our spacecraft. It's enhancing it. Somehow, they've managed to interface with Voyager 1 systems across the vacuum of space and upgrade her capabilities beyond anything we thought possible." Dr. Rodriguez pulled up another screen showing Voyager 1 system diagnostics. "Look at this, Dr. Mitchell. Her camera systems are back online. Cameras we shut down 20 years ago to conserve power. Her plasma wave instrument is detecting magnetic field fluctuations that our Earth-based telescopes can't even register. It's as if they've turned Voyager 1 into a window for us to see what they want us to see." Harold felt a deep unease settling in his chest. The benevolent image of advanced aliens sharing knowledge with humanity was giving way to something more complex and potentially troubling. An intelligence that could remotely control and enhance a spacecraft across 18 billion miles of space-possessed technology that could just as easily disable or destroy it. The question that haunted him was simple. What did they want? Had we tried responding? Harold asked. Had we attempted to send our own signals back through the deep space network? Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Rodriguez before answering. "We tried 3 hours ago. We sent a simple mathematical sequence, the same kind of pattern recognition test we've been receiving." "Harold, they responded within 7 minutes. The response time alone should be impossible. Radio signals from Earth to Voyager 1's position take over 20 hours each way. But somehow, they're responding in real time." The room fell silent as the enormity of that revelation sank in. Real-time communication across interstellar distances implied technologies that treated the speed of light as a mere suggestion rather than an absolute limit. Harold thought of Einstein's theories, the foundation of modern physics, being casually violated by beings who had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. What was their response? Harold asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Sarah brought up the final transmission on the main display. Instead of the complex mathematical patterns they'd been receiving, this message was simple, elegant, and terrifying in its implications. A single sequence of prime numbers, followed by a pause, then the same sequence repeated exactly as humanity had broadcast on the Voyager Golden Record decades earlier. They weren't just acknowledging the message. They were proving they had been listening to Earth's transmissions for far longer than anyone had imagined. As Harold stared at the display, he realized that first contact hadn't happened that morning when Voyager 1 began transmitting again. First contact had happened 45 years ago when they launched Voyager 1 toward a structure that was already waiting for it. Humanity had been under observation for decades, possibly longer, and only now were their watchers choosing to reveal themselves. The question that would haunt Harold for the rest of his life formed in his mind. If they had been watching humanity for so long, what had they seen that finally prompted them to make contact? And more importantly, what did they plan to do now that they had announced their presence to the world? The moment of truth arrived at 3:17 a.m. when the final transmission began. Harold had been dozing fitfully in his chair, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline that had sustained him through the night. But Dr. Chen's urgent voice jolted him awake with words that would echo through history. "Harold, they're sending images. Real-time visual data from Voyager 1's location. And what we're seeing..." Her voice trailed off as she struggled to find words for the impossible. The main display filled with an image that defied every assumption about the emptiness of interstellar space. Voyager 1's reactivated cameras revealed a vista that belonged in the realm of science fiction rather than scientific fact. Vast geometric structures stretched across the field of view, their surfaces reflecting starlight with the precise regularity of engineered materials. The structures appeared to be connected by streams of energy that pulse with rhythmic patterns, creating a network of artificial constructs in supposed emptiness between stars. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez, his voice barely audible. "It's not just one structure. It's an entire complex. A civilization built in the void between star systems. Harold moved closer to the display, his trained eye trying to comprehend the scale of what they were witnessing. The structures dwarfed anything humanity had ever conceived, their dimensions measured in thousands of kilometers rather than meters. But it was the next image that stopped Harold's heart entirely. Voyager 1's camera had rotated to show its own position, and what Harold saw there challenged his understanding of reality itself. Their small spacecraft, barely larger than the car, was nestled within some kind of containment field that glowed with soft, otherworldly light. But surrounding Voyager 1 were other objects, dozens of them, each clearly artificial, each representing a different technological approach to space exploration. "Those are other probes," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe and terror. "Spacecraft from other civilizations. Harold, we're looking at a collection. They've been gathering emissaries from across the galaxy, maybe for centuries or millennia. And now Voyager 1 has joined their museum of intelligent species." Harold felt the room spinning as the implications crashed over him. Humanity wasn't unique in sending messages to the stars. Across the galaxy, other civilizations had launched their own versions of Voyager, carrying their own golden records, their own hopes for contact. And all of them had been collected by this ancient intelligence that had built cities in the darkness between stars. "There's a pattern to their arrangement," Dr. Rodriguez observed, studying the formation of spacecraft in the containment field. "They're organized by technological sophistication and time of collection. Voyager 1 isn't even close to being the most advanced probe they've gathered. Some of these objects display engineering principles we can't even begin to understand." The realization hit Harold like a physical blow. Humanity's greatest technological achievement, the spacecraft they had celebrated as the pinnacle of human ingenuity, was primitive compared to the engineering marvels of other species. They weren't joining a community of equals. They were being cataloged as representatives of a relatively young and technologically limited civilization. But the most unsettling discovery came in the final series of images. The camera panned across the collection of alien spacecraft until it focused on one particular object, a probe whose design was disturbingly familiar. Its geometric lines and modular construction bore an unmistakable resemblance to human engineering principles. But according to the data overlay, this spacecraft had been collected nearly 1,000 years before Voyager 1's launch. "That's impossible," Harold breathed, staring at what appeared to be a human-designed spacecraft from humanity's medieval period. "We didn't have the technology 1,000 years ago. We were still using wooden ships and metal tools." Sarah's face had gone pale as she studied the image. "Harold, what if we're not the first human civilization to reach this level of technology? What if there have been others, previous iterations of human development that rose and fell before our current civilization emerged?" The thought sent ice through Harold's veins. The probe collection wasn't just representing different alien species. It was representing different attempts at technological civilization across the galaxy, including multiple attempts by humanity itself. They were looking at evidence of cyclical rise and fall, of civilizations that had achieved spaceflight only to disappear into history, their greatest achievements preserved only in this interstellar museum. "Why are they showing us this?" Harold asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "What do they want us to understand?" The answer came in the form of one final transmission, not through Voyager 1's communication systems, but directly to every radio telescope and deep space monitoring station on Earth. The message was simple, mathematical, and terrifying in its clarity. Coordinates for Earth's location in the galaxy, followed by a countdown timer showing exactly 72 hours, 14 minutes, and 33 seconds. As Harold watched the timer tick down on screens around the world, he realized that first contact hadn't been about communication or diplomacy. It had been about notification. The ancient intelligence that collected spacecraft and preserved civilizations was coming to Earth, and it had given humanity exactly 3 days to prepare for whatever that meant. The weight of that revelation settled over Harold like a shroud as he understood that his peaceful retirement had become the epicenter of humanity's greatest crisis. The tiny spacecraft he'd helped send to the stars had accomplished its mission of making contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The question now was whether humanity would survive that contact. Harold Mitchell stood in the JPL parking lot as dawn broke over Pasadena, his weathered hands gripping a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Behind him, The Mission Control Center buzzed with frantic activity as government officials, military advisors, and scientists from around the world converged to address humanity's first interstellar crisis. But Harold needed these quiet moments in the morning air to process what he was about to do. At 70 years old, he had become the reluctant spokesperson for a revelation that would shatter every assumption humanity held about its place in the universe. In 6 hours, he would stand before the world's media and deliver news that would change civilization forever. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on his shoulders like the gravity of a planet he'd never visit. Dr. Sarah Chin approached from a building, her footsteps echoing across the empty parking lot. "Harold, they're ready for the final briefing. The President's science advisor will be connecting from Washington, and we have delegations standing by from every major space agency on Earth." She paused, studying his face in the growing daylight. "Are you sure you want to be the one to announce this? You've already given 40 years of your life to space exploration. You've earned the right to step back." Harold looked up at the lightning sky, where Venus still shone brightly despite the approaching sunrise. Somewhere beyond that familiar beacon, 18 billion miles into the cosmic ocean, Voyager 1 continued its eternal journey. No longer alone in the interstellar void. "Sarah, when we launched Voyager 1, Carl Sagan said we were casting a bottle into the cosmic ocean, hoping that someday someone would find it and know that we were here. Well, someone found it. And now I have to tell the world what that means." The press conference was scheduled for noon Pacific time, when most of the world would be awake to witness humanity's entry into the galactic community. Harold had spent the morning rehearsing his statement, trying to find words that could convey the magnitude of their discovery without causing worldwide panic. How do you tell 7 billion people that they're not alone in the universe, and that their first contact with alien intelligence had revealed they were just one of many civilizations under observation by beings of almost godlike technological capability? As Harold walked back into the JPL complex, he passed a hallway lined with photographs from the golden age of space exploration, images of the moon landing, the first Mars rovers, the stunning pictures from Hubble Space Telescope, all representing humanity's greatest achievements in understanding and exploring the cosmos. But now those achievements felt like the first tentative steps of a toddler learning to walk, observed with patient amusement by adults whose capabilities were beyond imagination. The briefing room was filled with faces Harold recognized from decades of space missions, now joined by officials whose presence indicated just how seriously world governments were taking this development. General Patricia Hayes from Space Command, Dr. Elena Vasquez from ESA, Director Chen Wei from the Chinese National Space Administration. Representatives from every nation with significant space capabilities had gathered to hear Harold's final assessment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harold began, his voice carrying the weight of 7 decades of life and 4 decades of space exploration. 12 hours ago, we received the final transmission from the intelligence that has been communicating through Voyager 1. They've given us exactly 72 hours from that transmission to prepare for their arrival in our solar system. The room erupted in controlled chaos as officials whispered urgently into phones and tablets. Harold raised his hand for silence, knowing that what he said next would determine how humanity faced its greatest challenge. Based on the technology they've demonstrated, real-time communication across interstellar distances, the ability to remotely power and control our spacecraft, and the construction of massive structures in interstellar space, we must assume their capabilities far exceed our own. However, the fact that they've given us advance notice suggests they have no hostile intentions. They appear to be collectors, preservers of technological civilizations, and their arrival may represent an opportunity rather than a threat. Harold paused, looking around the room at the faces of the people who would shape humanity's response to first contact. But we must also acknowledge what the probe collection images revealed. This isn't the first time they've encountered human civilization. The evidence suggests that technological species, including our own, may rise and fall in cycles across cosmic time. Their arrival could represent evaluation for inclusion in their preservation program, or it could represent something else entirely. The questions came rapidly after that, about military preparations, about evacuation procedures, about communication protocols. But Harold found his mind drifting to his grandchildren, playing in their backyard garden, while their grandfather prepared to announce that their world was about to change forever. Would they grow up in a universe where humanity had joined a galactic community of preserved civilizations, or would they witness the beginning of humanity's next evolutionary leap? As the briefing concluded and Harold prepared for his historic press conference, he thought about Voyager 1's golden record, spinning silently in the cosmic void while carrying humanity's greatest hits to the stars. That record had been humanity's optimistic message to the universe, a declaration that they existed and hoped to be remembered. Now, as alien intelligences prepared to visit Earth for the first time in recorded history, Harold realized that humanity's message had been received, understood, and answered in ways they never could have imagined. The time had come to tell the world that humanity's lonely vigil in the cosmos was over. They were no longer alone among the stars, and their next chapter would be written in collaboration with intelligences that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. Harold Mitchell, the engineer who had helped launch humanity's farthest-traveling ambassador, was about to become the man who announced humanity's acceptance into a community they never knew existed.